do you structure communication across those silos for more engagement, more collaboration, culture of innovation, right? Like, people getting excited about, about testing and, gamification or whatever it might be.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really good question, actually. It's something that I think a lot of businesses we've been quite passionate about, and I think it's dead easy to kind of fall into that trap of kind of saying you've got to share every single experiment across every single person in the business, right? I think that's kind of the default setting, is shout about everything as much as possible. Which is kind of where, so thinking about Sky, that's kind of where we started at Sky, is we tried to get as much visibility of everything, or every test that we were running across the entire business. And the thing that we learned really, really quickly is actually it's much more important to get the right information in front of the right people for the right experiments. And it's really, really easy to just fall into a trap of just massively oversharing. As I was thinking back a couple of years now, I remember sitting with our kind of MD of digital. We were talking about something else, and he just kind of made like a bit of a comment about some test results, and you could kind of see that he kind of sort of spurred him on, reminded him something. One of the points that he made was, you send me all these test results and they're all amazing. Like, the detail that you put in them is fantastic. I understand why you're running this experiment. I understand the different variants. I understand the hypotheses that you're generating. I understand the significance that you've been through for the results. You've given me all this in this really nice, well-formatted slide deck. I just never read them. I just don't have the time to run through these hundreds of emails that you send out every week, every month, whatever. Just nobody has the time to look at that. What you need to be cognizant of is people are super time poor. They want the details, but they only want the details that they're interested in. And we basically tried running experiments on our experiment results.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what we do for a job, right? So why would we not experiment on ourselves?
Totally. Yeah.
And we kind of ran through a lot of different variants. We started doing some pretty basic marketing techniques. So we started putting like tracking links on emails that we were sending out, open dates and things like that. Super basic stuff, right?
We're doing stuff like that too. Yeah.
And what we kind of found is the more we could distill down the salient points of an experiment, and the more targeted we were with sending out the results, the better things were consumed. And we basically distilled this all the way down. And the only thing we send out now is a super simple data table. It's what test is it? What's the hypotheses? Did it win? So what? And then what are you doing next? That's it. That's all we send. We send a link out to a library that we've got, a hypothesis library, which is super important, which is kind of where we track the kind of interaction with experiments. And kind of what we've learned now is we sort of know which audiences to send which type of experiments to. So if it's an experiment that's focused on commerce, on a conversion funnel, we know we'll send it to these guys, right? They're always going to be interested in it.
Yeah.
If it's an experiment that's focused on something that's completely nothing to do with the commerce funnel, don't bother sending it to them guys. They won't know, but they'll know that there's things there to look at.
Yeah.
I think for us, the communication changes slightly as you get more mature, from being, okay, here is a load of experiments that might be related to something that you're interested in. We've kind of changed that narrative now to be more along the lines of, okay, here are some people in the business that you might want to go speak to.
Yeah.
Here are the people that are running experiments in that space. And they know much more about it than the centralized team do. We have an exposure to it, but they know everything about it. So instead of looking through this hypothesis library for tests, individual tests, go talk to these people.
So the second question, do you see experimentation as a function to do science or to ship better product? And this, I want to add to this question. I'd love this question, and it came from you. You seeded me with it already, because I had, before this interview, I had asked you like what you're up to, but I love it because it, circling back to how when I press record here, people can get over committed or stuck on a technique. You know, the hammer in your hand is an experiment, and that's all we do. And maybe that's not the appropriate time. And I say no to a lot of people. Like, you shouldn't be testing. Like, no, stop looking at this as an experiment and look at another way to get that data, or another way to make your decision, or just do it. And so there's from a lot of the people that I talk to, they look at experimentation as a layer underneath channel owners. So it's a decision support layer of like, it sort of floats underneath. These channel owners might have questions, and that experimentation group is there to do the knowledge transfer, you know, data informed knowledge transfer to answer those questions. Decision support, there's different nomenclature there. But is the ultimate goal just to ship better product and to improve customer experience? And, you know, so are we doing product development, or are we doing optimization, margins, and process?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting question. I think we could probably chat about this a bit over the time, but definitely both of those things. Experimentation does need to cross both of those things, right? It definitely needs to be thought of as a scientific decision support function, but the kind of core concept in what you are trying to do in any team across any business is literally make things better for customers, make things easier for customers. And I think sometimes as an industry, as an experimentation industry, as we were kind of sort of talking about earlier, we get lost in that, and we kind of get so focused on this like quest for perfect science that we almost forget that we're not in the business of being scientists. We're in the business of working for businesses. The brands that we work for, they're not. I mean, obviously, some people out there will be working for scientific discovery brands, right? But mostly, we're not in the business of being scientists. You know, like at Sky, we're in the business of telecoms. We want to make sure that we have a grounding in scientific basis, and we're doing things in the right way, and we're doing things that we can evidence and that we can prove they're empirical. We need to be cognitive of that. But I think sometimes one of the biggest problems that I see with a lot of people that work in experimentation is the kind of inability to understand that businesses are not perfect, and that businesses will make sort of batshit crazy decisions, right? And you need to be able to sort of have one foot in each world, I think, to be really, really good in this space. And really sort of, I guess what it boils down to is you need to be able to talk to your stakeholders. And you need to be able to talk to your stakeholders in a language that they understand. And I think that's really, really important, that sometimes maybe some of your stakeholders, maybe they'll get that scientific background. They'll maybe want to talk about statistical significance even of significant data models or something like that. But I think those conversations are genuine, if you will, far between in the real world and out in real business.
Yeah.
I think most stakeholders want to know just that pure, what were you trying to do, and did it work, and can I be confident that it worked? They don't want to know the ins and outs of it. And I think the point about having this kind of layer of almost decision support, I think a lot of experimentation teams do sit in that space of, here's an idea. Is this a good idea? Can you validate this idea for me? Can you answer this question for me? And I think for me, where things get really good and really advanced is where you move that layer above, and then you're using experimentation to help people understand what questions they should be asking. Like, how do we even know that this is a question that we need to ask, never mind before we even think about validating it?
Yeah.
What can we learn? How can we learn what customers are looking for? And then we can go away, we can we can solutionize, we can build an experiment and use that to validate this concept, this idea. But we need to be able to experiment with different ways of kind of coming up with those ideas to start with.
The third question, how do you see the balancing of new hypothesis generation versus the learning and analysis for inputs from the program? So iteration and keep on dredging through the existing analyses versus the work to be done from the stakeholder group or the customer research and identifying new problem as inputs into the program. Like how do you balance the sort of the front side of what the machine is ingesting?
Just generally, I guess it feels like there's just far too, maybe definitely more recent thing, right? There's just so much emphasis on this on the whole world of post-test analysis, and it's thinking about like almost to the point where is experimentation something that happens, or is experimentation just purely a data science? And I think you could start, if you started reading from today, without all of the kind of background that we've kind of been through, talking about loads of different things, you would automatically assume that experimentation is all about data science. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, it's kind of really cool to be discussing the kind of ins and outs of the different methods of kind of analysis, whether you're frequentist or Bayesian, whatever. Yeah, it's great to be talking about how you can build chi-square testing. That's super interesting. But every now and again, it kind of feels a little bit like this is a bit of a look how smart we are.
Yeah, it's a mental masturbation.
We can build this amazing model. And when you think about it, the post-test analysis is important, it's super important, but it's actually quite a small part of what your experimentation program should look like, what your experimentation process should look like. Wow. And it feels like there's a genuine disproportion of the amount of noise about that when you compare it to everything else. And I think
so the headline is placing the experimentation function under the data team will lead to mental masturbation.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I'll tell you, I think I would 100% of the time, I guess this, I don't know whether this might be controversial, I'm not sure, but I think 100% of the time, literally 100% of the time, I would take a really well thought out, data-driven hypotheses that was super focused on an actual customer problem. And I'd love my analysis efforts to be at that side of my experimentation program. Yeah. And figuring out the kind of analysis issues afterwards. Because that's the thing, is like the more defined and targeted your hypotheses, the more evidence you've got to support why you want to do this in the first place, the more obvious that win's going to be, the more obvious that change in behavior is going to be, the less you're going to need to be super reliant on, like really proving how smart your analysis model is.